What is the most overrated video game of all time? At this point, Pokemon. Ever since it got to 3D, it's gone downhill in terms of gameplay quality. I'm not going to argue about Pokemon designs because my issue is how they never got their Super Mario Odyssey or Breath of the Wild. Even the Mega Evolutions are fine, but they keep adding and changing gimmick mechanics to the point it feels like Yu-Gi-Oh!, where every entry has to add their own mechanic, and it makes the overarching game a cluster of rules and modifiers. They milk nostalgia so hard like Sword and Shield. So many Gigamax evolutions, special versions of Dynamax, one on new Pokemon, but most were Gen 1 Pokemon. No other company do I see so shielded from their lack of quality and innovation. We even had a taste of an improved gameplay formula in Arceus and us researching Pokemon. We use It's a Kids game as an excuse to make crap when kids deserve good, if not better games than us, cause they don't have the knowledge to know it's crap. I gotta wholeheartedly agree with this, not the part about Pokemon being generally crap, just that I do think Pokemon as a franchise is shielded far too much for what people get. I mean, it's one of the most goddamn successful franchises in the entire world, and the games are fine, but that's just it. They're fine. I think Scarlet and Violet did look crap, though. Like, for me personally, X and Y was the last Pokemon game that I actually bought, and then I borrowed Sword or Shield, I can't remember which one, and it was fine, but I really do expect better from one of the most successful franchises in the entire world. Probably the most successful franchise in the world. I'm gonna stick my neck out and say The Last of Us is a cool story to experience once, but as a video game, it's not some 10 out of 10 mind-blowing experience, and people got way too fanatical about it. I personally really enjoyed The Last of Us. I played through it multiple times. I even did a run where I refused to use guns where the game did not force me to. It's a solid game, but it's also one of those games that basically went, oh, a man can only be interesting and deep and philosophical and sad and vulnerable if he has a child around. Like, you know what put me off 2018 God of War? When, oh, Kratos has a son now, and now he's an interesting character. Kratos was already interesting, you cowards. There were already several segments in multiple games that showed the depth of his anguish at the loss of his family and his vulnerability, which he channels through unyielding violence. Far Cry. The first 3 were ahead of the game, but everything since is just copy and pasted. You mean like everything else that Ubisoft make? Oh, I went there. I actually don't really play Far Cry. I've only played Far Cry Primal on the Wii. I actually have Far Cry 2 on my Steam library because it was like £2 or something like that. So maybe I'll give that a go because this guy said, I've heard the original Far Cries are freaking amazing. But yeah, Ubisoft as a company, I feel like their newer Far Cry games, friggin' Assassin's Creed, they all just kind of blend together in my eyes. I don't really care about them anymore. I used to love Assassin's Creed, and Rayman Origins freaking rocked. Like, Ubisoft used to be a good company. Overwatch, it's just a shooter, man. It doesn't deserve the worship that it got, and it consistently underdelivers. People assume it has such deep lore and world, but it really is a bare bone of a basic concept done to death. I don't take this comment that seriously. I'm not an Overwatch guy. I used to be when it first came out. I played it for ages with friends all the time, but I'm pretty sure the die-hard fans of Overwatch are few and far between at this point, and it is far from an overrated game at this stage. Feel free to tell me if I'm wrong, though. Might be a controversial take, but The Elder Scrolls V Skyrim. I love it and hate it at the same time. I love the potential, but hate the execution. I love the lore around it, but hate how the game shows barely any of it. I love the world, but hate how empty it is. I love the characters, if they had any character at all. I love and hate it with a passion. I never actually finished The Elder Scrolls V Skyrim, but, I think it's a case with open-world games where it's very easy to lose steam in them. It was just okay, in my opinion. Not like, it was pretty groundbreaking, I guess, for 2011. God, that's old now. But personally, I was just getting super into Monster Hunter at that stage in my life. World of Warcraft. The lengths people will go through to try and keep that game playable is astounding. Combat just feels so clunky and repetitive. Okay, so I love Final Fantasy XIV, but I really don't think combat is the biggest thing in World of Warcraft. What I like about World of Warcraft is the world and exploring that world. That is dope as hell, exploring Azeroth. I'm gonna catch some crap for this, but Bioshock. It never caught flack for being derivative of System Shock, even to the point of being named in an obvious homage to it. Probably because relatively few people actually played System Shock at that point. But if they had, they might have wished Bioshock was more derivative of it, because while Bioshock dresses itself with the language of immersive sims, it completely failed to deliver on its initial promise of an open-level, play-it-your-way experience. Bioshock is a game where you can sneak, but you can't beat the game by sneaking. You can hack, but you can't beat the game by hacking. Open combat is an inevitability. Similarly, the levels are big and open, but it always has a very clear idea of where you're supposed to go next and how you'll get there. I suppose it's appropriate in an ironic way that Bioshock only ever gives you the illusion of choice. Speaking of which, the narrative is overall pretty mediocre, aside from the admittedly well-executed twist everyone talks about. Many of the areas, the only reason you're there is that it was between you and your objective, and that it's kind of the tone. It also mostly fails to integrate its political themes. Rapture's liberation vision failed because everyone got a substance that gave them superpowers but made them insane, not because the original vision was ghastly. Similarly, the communist opposition to it failed because the leader was secretly corrupt from the start. The game never really offers an opinion on whether either idea could work or why they would fail. It just kind of plays in the space for a bit before something else makes the question irrelevant. Yeah, I kind of get where they're coming from. I still enjoy Bioshock. I haven't played it for a while, but if you really want a game that's really open in the way that you can approach the entirety of it and win in very specific ways, then play Dishonored. That is an amazing game. That's the game that I will talk about, and people are probably going to turn around and go, oh, that's so overrated though. No. It's a perfect game, actually. Zelda Breath of the Wild. I am a Zelda fan. I really love the series. I tried my best to get into this game and I wanted to love it, but I just could not as I found it very boring. Fair enough if they feel that way. Personally, I thought that Breath of the Wild is probably one of the single greatest open world experiences in any video game ever. If anything, I'm having more trouble playing Tears of the Kingdom recently. I just cannot get into that game right now. Maybe it's because I'm just so busy and stuff, or I don't know, maybe it's because it feels a bit too similar to the original game with a lot of added mechanics. Sure, but whatever. Listen, it's still good, but in no universe should Ocarina of Time win a best game of all time competition. And yet, I think I disagree with that. I actually think the design philosophy in Ocarina of Time is super good. Z-targeting is still used to this day in many games, although obviously it's not called Z-targeting anymore, it's just lock-on. I don't know, I feel like you could probably take a lot of third-person action games and be like, oh yeah, this kind of originated from Ocarina of Time in this way, you know? I mean, for God's sake, Dark Souls, Elden Ring and all that, it's basically just Ocarina of Time, really, when you get down to gameplay, but it's all polished and smooth and amazing. So personally, I gotta disagree with that. I think Ocarina of Time frickin' rocks, actually. And I ain't even talking from a place of nostalgia. I played that game for the first time all the way through on the 3DS. Controversial opinion, the Dark Souls franchise. I think most of its difficulty is artificially created by clunky controls and a deliberate vagueness about how to tackle enemies. The people who love this game will say these are exactly the things that make it so great and I just need to get good scrub. Opinions differ and that's fine, but for me it feels like a disingenuous way to make things more difficult. I couldn't disagree with this person more. In my opinion, Dark Souls and Bloodborne, Elden Ring, and Dark Souls 3, but not Dark Souls 2, use a lot of context and logic in the way that they do level design and enemy placement. Easy example, Sen's Fortress. If you run straight in there, you will notice that the first thing that happens is you activate a trap. This establishes a tone and establishes what you need to look out for and the kind of things that this place has up its sleeves. And if you don't adapt to stop and analyze the area for dangers and whatnot, where you can and where you feel safe to, then you're gonna be fine. But if you just rough rod right in there, then you're gonna die. I frickin' love Dark Souls. I can't wait for Armored Core, but I feel bad for the OG fans because Armored Core is not Dark Souls. Black and White, Molyneux's magnum opus, was just a glorified Tamagotchi. Never played Black and White 1, but I did love Black and White 2 as a kid. Red Dead Redemption 2, because it's just not fun to play, which, for me, is what a video game should be, Dutch. I'm actually playing through this game for the first time recently, and it's not that it's not fun, but it's certainly a bit annoying when the game forces me to beat a guy because I need to catch tuberculosis or, the 2-hour intro and stuff. Still a good game, but I agree, it is definitely overrated. Honestly, Final Fantasy VII is extremely overrated. The story isn't that interesting, and the majority of other elements remain the same from previous entries. In my opinion, it only became so popular because it was the first disc-based Final Fantasy game and launched on the PS1 during its amazing sales point. Just about everyone had a PS1. Most of the ads for FF7 were promoting multiple discs, CG cutscenes, advanced graphics, and so on. FF7 released at the right time and at the right place, but it is by far one of the weaker entries. Oh, I shouldn't have chosen this topic. I want to talk about these things so much. But I disagree. I think the original Final Fantasy VII is actually really freaking special. If we're talking about the remake, I don't think it's crap by any means, but I really don't like the changes they made to the remake. I'll leave it there because I've got a job to do, but god damn it, does it pain me not to talk about this in more detail.
The Call of Duty franchise. Literally the same game every single time.
I may have said it earlier, but I don't like military shooters, unless they have, like, I don't know, a gimmick to them like Titanfall 2 or something. But I actually don't think every Call of Duty game is exactly the same. If you go back far enough and then go to where we are now, there have been major changes to the game. Maybe now, more recently, the games are probably being more and more similar, but, like, I don't even see them get released as frequently as they used to be. Death Stranding. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure upon release, the game actually did not sell that well, at least not in Hideo Kojima's eyes. I heard he had a bit of a fit that people didn't really get the game and that he's an auteur and he's ahead of his time, which I like Hideo Kojima, but I think Hideo Kojima, overall, kind of overrated, actually. Especially since he's been, like, you know, rubbing elbows with, like, Hollywood actors and directors and stuff and just shoving them haphazardly into his video games. As much as it pains me to say it, I think Minecraft is pretty overrated. Perhaps not the most of all time, but nonetheless so. I have quite a few friends who absolutely refuse to play anything other than Minecraft, just because they are so convinced that it is the best video game of all time, and all others are trash. I definitely don't agree with that, but that isn't the only reason I think it is overrated. Honestly, Minecraft has lost a lot of its charm over the years. The gameplay is simple and not extremely engaging. The only reason I use it today is for creative builds. Also, it was never and still isn't worth $30 goddamn. I actually haven't played Minecraft since it initially came out. My brother got like the beta for it. The Binding of Isaac. Meh. It alright. The Binding of Isaac is super good. I love the way that items pile onto each other to make cool mixtures, but I actually prefer one of the creators' earlier games called Gish. Hogwarts Legacy. Yeah, I think that major attempt at boycotting that game just ended up having the reverse effect that people wanted. Red Dead Redemption 2. I have never played a game that someone went to such effort to build a massive, well-engineered and detailed wilderness, only to fill it with so little that it brought me nearly to tears with boredom. But so many people rave about this game and I will never understand it. Like I said, I've been playing it recently and I do think it's a good game, but I think this is just the problem with massive open world games. There is very little that they can do to fill these worlds in a satisfying way that isn't better done than a small, concentrated world where you can absolutely stuff it to the brim with good, solid content. That can then feed into level design, theming for the area, etc. I'm not going to go into this anymore. Shadow of the Colossus. Apart from visuals, the game was a chore to play. You know, I actually prefer Eco a little more than Shadow of the Colossus, but Shadow of the Colossus to me is more like an experience. Like, there's no other game like it. God of War Ragnarok. I'm sorry, but it just didn't do it for me. Completely underwhelming. Felt more like a mountain climbing simulator than anything. And Kratos literally only kills one frickin' god the entire gameplay. WTF. I get he's changing in a different person, but really, the ghost of Sparta needs help to fight Odin's old female dog butt. And sure, he beats Thor the second fight, but he forgives Thor and doesn't want to hurt him, despite Thor trying to kill his son earlier. Instead of God of War, I got God of holding hands and licking buttholes. Little bit extreme at the end there, but no, I get where he's coming from. I still stand by that. People try to say that these new games have more depth than the original ones, but I think it's just people didn't really pay attention to the old games. I have no idea if this was considered good, and I've never played a Kojima game, but Death Stranding. I have never experienced a piece of media so far up its own butt. Like 6 minutes of gameplay in the first 2 hours of the game, the biggest challenge in that time was walking in a straight line, utterly confusing menus, the wild swings between characters staring at nothing and explaining nothing, and ham-fisted exposition, a riveting chase scene except the land is shrouded in fog and the monsters are invisible, a soulless world with like 5 people in it, 2 of which have dead or die in their name, who constantly introduce themselves like they aren't the only people we've ever met, and freedom of camera movement during the interminable cutscenes. If you're going to just make a movie, at least give us cinematography. I swear I only played as long as I did because I couldn't believe the game would continue to be so bad. I'm convinced it's End of Evangelion the game, a double middle finger to his fans who will buy anything of his, so he made a pile of nonsense to watch their mental gymnastics explain why the game is secretly genius. The only reason I might be bringing up some games twice is because people are actually explaining why they didn't like it, and I've never played this game, and that's all I really have to say about it. I played every Borderlands game from start to finish and I hated them. I kept assuming they would suddenly get better and I would understand why people loved them. Nope. I admittedly find the writing of Borderlands 3, which was the latest one that I played recently, abysmal, but I think the games have merits. The shooting's fun, the random gun loot is cool, and yeah, they're okay. Hollow Knight. I get it, Metroidvanias aren't for everyone, it's easy to get lost in it, even with the map to some degree, but god damn it, may the power of Christ compel you! Gears of War, Monster Hunter, Final Fantasy. I don't get why these IPs are so popular. Popularize the third-person cover-based shooter, tracking monsters, fighting monsters, building new weapons to fight more monsters out of the monsters that you previously fought is awesome. One of the first video game IPs to tell an engaging and ambitious narrative. First-person shooters. It doesn't matter what the name is, it's all the goddamn same thing, repackaged over and over and over again. Clearly you don't play enough first-person shooters because they do in fact vary wildly. I absolutely love Hunt Showdown because it's a lot more methodical and slow-paced. I don't feel like I can just die the instant I get ambushed a lot of the time because the guns aren't automatic and whatnot. That's just one example of a first-person shooter I like though. Heavy Rain. I know people crap on it now, but it did very well when it first came out. Same with Beyond Two Souls and Detroit Become Human. David Cage is a funny one. I've not played a single one of his games. I can see that he tries to push the envelope a little bit in his own way, but I kind of put him in the same category as Telltale games, where they're games that I will simply watch someone else play. Cuphead. I never understood the appeal of it. To me, it's just a 2D platformer with quick mechanics and old-fashioned animation style and difficult bosses. I don't think it's a bad game, by the way. I've been playing that with my girlfriend lately, and she's so much better than me at it. She's absolutely carrying the team. But I don't know, I think that Cuphead is sort of an instant classic just based on the amount of time and effort that went into it. Like, if you look at the original trailer, it looks so bare bones compared to what it became. Horizon Zero Dawn. I was excited to play this game when it first came out, and honestly I found it tedious and a bit basic and bland. I'd have preferred it to be a linear game as opposed to open world because there isn't enough in the world for it to be that enjoyable. I think that's just it in the end. Open world games. Open world games are overrated. We need to return to smaller, more directed and concentrated areas in games where, like I said earlier, you can concentrate on theming, you can base level design and missions around it. But most of all, I think it's a big part that people do not like about open world games. You can make traversal of the world more engaging. Any battle royale. It was cool at first, then the novelty of it wore off years ago. It is literally a running simulator, and the design of the mode itself promotes people to play like absolute rats and hide in buildings the whole entire frickin' match. Absolute dog crap, trash piece of crap genre that I can't wait to see die so I can wee on its grave. Not sure if I go that far about my feelings of the genre, but I thought it was cool when they made a JoJo's Bizarre Adventure battle royale game, and then I looked at it and it looked kind of crap. Dare I say, Assassin's Creed is a walking simulator with occasional action and stealth tactics. Yeah, I dropped off Assassin's Creed after Brotherhood, admittedly, mostly because I wanted to play the multiplayer, which I still think is actually a really cool multiplayer mode. Ghost of Tsushima. Game was okay, but it was overhyped in my opinion. I actually think Ghost of Tsushima got absolutely robbed for Game of the Year in 2020. Like, Hades was good, but it was in early access for freaking ages. Like, I know it was the official time where it was finished and everything, but I don't think it even deserved to be there because it was in early access for so long. Honestly, I kind of think the only reason The Last of Us 2 actually won Game of the Year in 2020 is because it met all the ESG regulations. PT. Whenever there is talk about horror games, lots of people talk about it as if it is the pinnacle of horror games. Hell, it was a demo of an eventually shelved product. Yo, I don't care what you say. That game was scary as a mother. I literally dropped my controls screaming into my full English dinner while playing it with a friend. But it was also quite maddening to figure out how to proceed in that game. In my opinion, probably GoldenEye. I was playing PC games at the time. Quake, Team Fortress was already out, and my expectations were built up by people who hadn't played an FPS before. Same type of thing happened when Halo released on Xbox, and people acted like it was the first game with LAN play. Had trouble deciding between GoldenEye and Halo, but I at least had some fun with Halo games. GoldenEye always felt like a clumsy attempt to me. I have never had a good time playing GoldenEye, so I agree. When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications. Put the playlist on in the background to finish listening to all the stories. And if you like Am I the Genius, give Am I the Jerk a shot. Linked in the description below.